All right. Thanks for being here with us, folks. Today, we have our friend Ross Garren sitting in here with us. Ross Garren is a name that I've heard thrown about for a number of years. Had some brief encounters with him from time to time. I remember when he did a small review of our Mist Train blues, and I remember being really amazed that he caught some of the subtleties in the record that I didn't think anybody would pay attention to. And then Ross came fully back into our lives when Kim Field started kicking off the Harmonica Northwest Manuka event outside of Portland, and Kim asked me about a guy that could kind of be on the know about jazz, chromatic harmonica, playing overblows on the diatonic. And I said, yeah, you should check out Ross Garren. And let me tell you, I am really glad I made that recommendation, because Ross and I have been really tight since then. It has been a really cool thing. So, Ross, thank you, man, for being here with us.
Thank you guys for having me.
And I'm going to be embarrassing you a lot more in this little discussion here, so be ready for it.
Awesome.
That's right. And so, yeah, just to give a little bit more introduction to Ross, he's played on many, many, many movie soundtracks, including the new Bob Dylan movie, A Complete Unknown, another movie called Sinners that's come out recently. He's done a lot of studio work with artists like Beyonce and Ben Folds and many more. So it's so interesting, all the different stuff that you have done. You know, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I've been really lucky to have a pretty unusual variety of things I've gotten to work on, and yeah, love it.
Yeah, I mean, so how do you, as a musician, it's like you're playing all these different like styles and genres. It seems like how are you so chameleon? Like we're fascinated because Joe and I are kind of stylists. We like to play, really in these old time blues and this particular style. But I've noticed it just seems like you can kind of weave in between all sorts of different musical styles.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It's funny. I think I look at it from the opposite direction, where I see guys who have really taken a love and study of a certain thing, and they took it to the maximum, finding, and really discovered all the details and their own kind of unique ways of navigating through something that they're totally studied in. And so when I look at that, I'm like, dang, those are the real guys, so I see it kind of the opposite direction. So for me, I think it's not something I can think of at this point in time, which I guess now I'm getting old enough that I'm probably forgetting a lot of stuff that I did. But at this point in time, it doesn't feel so much like something I worked on a lot. I think being in Southern California, in the LA area, I think it's pretty common for musicians to be fielding wide varieties of calls for things, especially if you're if you had access to a certain type of music education path where you learn to read a little bit. And, I think it is not uncommon for, younger guys that came up maybe playing in their high school big band, but they weren't really jazz guys. That wasn't their love, but they kind of played that. Then they learned a little bit about reading. And I think, at least in Southern California, between doing wedding band gigs, playing church gigs, getting the occasional, gig having to read something for a musical theater pit, I think that's pretty normal for people around there. And just purely at the service of not doing a terrible job, trying to figure out enough of what it might be that would get it feeling good to play those kinds of things. I think that's kind of how it's evolved for me. I don't consider myself particularly masterful at any particular style, but just as a result of trying to figure out how to do those gigs, I suppose it has happened. And I think it's pretty normal for guys in my geographic location, you know.
Right. I guess, you know, it's interesting too with the reading music too, because I think in the sort of blues and folk harmonica, there's not a lot of reading music, you know.
Right. It might do you a disservice actually at times,
Yeah, but that's cool that you have those skills.
Yeah, I think for me, I guess I just kind of lucked out that I really fell in love with blues harp when I was, you know, like in middle school age, but really liked music in general. So I that was like the passion that got me really excited. But then in just, you know, that's like pre-internet era and stuff, so that I couldn't really find a lot of resources. I think at that time, maybe it was still just Tony Glover's book was the only one that was like available at like the Borders bookstore, and so there wasn't a lot of information. So in my interest in music, I just ended up, you know, I had taken piano lessons before that, and, you know, I had that kind of normal background a little bit. But in my interest, I ended up, I think, just enjoying trying to learn from resources that were around, like high school jazz band and stuff like that. So probably if I had access to all this awesome harmonica knowledge that I see now, I might not have actually bothered to check out these other things. It was just kind of what was available, or, you know, I'd see a great local piano player playing, like, what was that now, you know? And so
now if someone contacts you about playing like blues harmonica on a soundtrack, are they sending you like musical notation of like what notes to play, or do you kind of come up with what you're gonna do?
I feel like it's probably production by production. I think there might have been an era where the convention was so strongly towards orchestrators' notation. You know, there's a very finely oiled Hollywood machine that I think there was an era probably where maybe all sessions were done with notation and that kind of thing, even if the notation was just like said solo and this 8 bars or something like that, but it would still be like formally prepped by like a professional copyist and that kind of thing. So that happens a lot, but I do think if it's something that is idiomatic to a style that the notation wouldn't be a normal part of that style, like blues, I'd say it's a little mixed, you know, like in terms of the reading of it, you know.
It's interesting. I guess I was just thinking it would be difficult for a composer that didn't know the instrument or know where the bends are and stuff, you know, to write, you know.
Well, it's also, I think,
like that,
I think when somebody notates something like that, it can be really difficult to have it feel right, even if you nailed it. You know what I mean? Because it's
maybe not natural or something. Or
well, there's certainly the process of like the famous great artist that did it was not like a classical realization of a notated part. You know what I mean? And so. I found it's happened to me always, you know, where somebody wrote a part that was really great for harp, where somebody wrote something that was really did not lay on harp, where somebody notated something that felt like didn't need to be notated, and then other times, where the notation actually was really great. And I think a lot of it's just based on who that musician is and how thoughtful and, you know.
It's interesting though. Yeah, it's a very different process, I think, than what we're used to, because you're kind of on call. People call you up and you have to kind of come up with something that's different all the time, I suppose.
Well, I mean, there's also that era of record making too, where a lot of stuff was notated, you know, when you're thinking about like high production value Frank Sinatra type stuff and all that kind of Carpenters with strings and all that, like that. It seems to me, in my experience, it's rare on people's albums, like artist albums. I'd say it's fairly rare for me that people have a lot of notated stuff, even if they had specific ideas. It tends to not be like a professional orchestrator who's like written and copied parts and
Right.
But in film, a lot more of that. Not exclusively, but a lot more.
Yeah.
And the more I work with people, the more I think they trust you or something, you know, to like do what they want, you know.
Right.
Without notating. But it's a big part of it for sure.
Yeah.
But I will say, I don't feel like you have to be an amazing reader for the stuff that I've gotten to do, at least, you know.
But you have that ability. So you started on piano before you played harmonica?
I took piano lessons as a kid in like, probably early grade school a little bit. Yeah. And I really liked it. Yeah.
Nice.
So let's talk about the Dylan movie
Oh, yeah.
soundtrack. So I think it's obvious that if you're recording, laying down the parts that is supposed to be Bob Dylan playing the harmonica, then you're going to make it sound as much like Bob Dylan as you possibly can. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. They probably would have fired you if you were not delivering those goods. But in that movie, there's also this scene with supposedly Sonny Terry, and you are able to also. So your ability to play the harmonica and play blues is extremely vast, and you're aware that if they want blues harmonica playing, that you know that there's like 12 shades of that you could do. Is it a situation where the producer, the engineer there can tell you, no, I want it sounding more like this or more like that, or do they tend to leave it up to you and your judgment, or all of the above?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your help with that. When they did ask for that Sonny Terry scene, I was like, oh shit, I don't know about this. And I asked you. You sent me Sonny Shuffle, I believe, and shared a lot of thoughts that really opened my eyes up into being able to sort of more believably capture a Sonny Terry, a respectful tribute to him as best as possible.
You did. It was amazing.
And so I got to thank you, and that resource that you've created is invaluable. You know, all of those study songs, a lot of information I never got before I found those. So
You may have gotten relief from it, but I got joy from it.
But to answer your question, I think it's probably producer to producer, because so I feel like sound-alike projects are not, something where you're supposed to mimic something. I would say that's not a big portion of stuff I've done. And a lot of the stuff that I've done that's sound-alike, I want to say is like a little bit lower budget. Like almost the concept is a lot of times, I think, you don't have to license the real song and pay that, but here's the cheap version that some other guys in the production music world did. And I'd say a lot of times, because those budgets are lower, I have found the people I've worked for would give a pretty wide margin of error that it's like, that's close enough. It's not big. We're not going to go crazy on it. We don't have enough money to just do your best and we'll be good with that. That's, I would say, generally for sound-alikes has been the thing. Now, this movie, a very pro crew that was really caring about all the details. Great producer with a really outstanding ear for those details, down to the recording side of it, like what types of microphones are going to make sense. That particular movie was covering a wide swath of like high production value studio recordings, right? Dylan in the studio, but then there's also Dylan at live music venues, different technology. So they were fairly conscientious of even on the recording quality side of it, being cognizant of how the what we were recording was going to present, from an audio standpoint. And I would say that definitely I fielded a lot of questions and a lot of requests about, it sounds like he's maybe playing more than one note right there, and you kind of landed on one note. Like, is that, can you do, stuff like that, and dynamic shading, like And I think the Sonny Terry one I definitely got the least feedback on, because probably that is not the central figure, and it was even though I really went hard on that scene, the way that it presents in the movie is it's almost like kind of background music. It didn't, it wasn't quite, even though that was something I put like an entire day into. It definitely but whereas the Dylan things was much more like, put that way under the microscope. And so I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, you are. I just wanted to talk about it, man. I just wanted to get it out there and talk about it. I want to be very clear. Let me state this so it's even less confusing. Another one of the many reasons why I think this cat is so amazing is that if they wanted to hire somebody to put harmonica down, he could probably imitate just about any player, and given a few hours of practice time and stuff, that's how versatile he is. And that's only one layer of his musicianship, because he plays the chromatic and all kinds of other stuff too. So it's really pretty amazing. It's I think a lot of studio guys might be good at doing one thing and one thing only, and that's what you get. But this is Mr. Versatility over here.
Well, I will say, I appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Working on it. But I do think with that movie, because it was Dylan and Sonny Terry, they're like two of the absolute most iconic, and this was a really significant production. So I definitely felt a desire to do them both some level of justice. Obviously, the goal is not 100% to sound like them, because their recordings already exist. But it also was kind of the job at hand, that the task at hand was to not sound too far away from them either. So I did, so Sonny Terry, I guess just really trying to get into the details of what that tone production within reason that was fitting to him. Obviously it's not going to be exactly him. It was interesting that piece was Walk On, which obviously if I was going to just ham it up and try to do a Sonny Terry impression for people who don't know too much better, it'd probably be like some kind of whooping thing, but it was not that. It was the kind of shuffle side of him, which had all this cool stuff in there that I had not put under the microscope until you helped me and they sent me that, and I put it under the microscope and realized there was a lot of stuff going on that was not in my everyday playing. And same with Dylan too. I had played Dylan songs a lot over the years, because that people that I work with, they play Dylan songs, they play Neil Young songs, all this kind of stuff. But it is pretty rare that I've been in a situation where I was supposed to even sound like them. It wasn't discussed. Most people who want to sound that way, they're probably playing the rack and they're doing it themselves. Yeah. So it's rare that I was in a position to attempt to sound like that. So getting into some of the nuances of Dylan's sound, and obviously he's coming at it really different from, I got into harmonica through the great blues harp players, and then, Stevie Wonder and Toots, that was kind of the sort of pillars of what got me excited. And his approach is so different from that I had to do kind of a similar dive as I had to with you with Sonny Terry, just in terms of like this tone production, what's happening here, like, wow, and for that project, it felt very worthwhile to attempt to do that because of just what the nature of the project was,
So in addition to your existence, your career as a studio musician, which you play a lot of instruments, you also got some cool musical collaborations that you're doing I think occasionally as a duo member and a sideman in various things. Tell us about some of the things that are the most exciting or rewarding for you personally.
Well, in the last couple of years, or this year, I think there's really only two people I'll be touring with, which is pretty much the same groups that I've gotten to work with in recent years anyway. And one is Hot Tuna, which has been such a fun live gig. I kind of, really sort of lucked into it that at one point in time, Jack, the bass player, was making a solo album. I somehow got a call to play harp on his record. We had a great time. And just like a couple years later, I guess he talked to Jorma, his partner, and was like, we should have this guy come play with us. I played a show or two, and now I've gotten to do a fair amount of touring with them. And so that's been super fun for me anytime. And it's rare for me that I get to really like interact with the real deal. Those guys are time capsules that are still playing incredibly well, from what I can tell, just as well as ever. They are really sharing kind guys with their information and experiences and wisdom, and playing with them super fun. They want it to be different every night.
Nice.
They want I've never had a paid touring gig that I can think of where it's just like we're jamming every song and like you just solo until you don't think you got anything left, and like
pass it on.
Yeah, it's like every song is like that. So it's really fun. Really, I've always enjoyed the touring experiences I've had, but that's definitely that's probably the only one I've had where it felt like a real incentive to be a better improviser. I'd say a lot of the other ones I've had, it's more like I really want to dive in as regularly as I can to hone in nuances and really be a great performer for these moments where the harmonica is going to be featured, or on tours where it's like I'm the bass player on bass harp, I need to get that together. But this is one where it's like open, improvised, blowing a lot. So that's been great. And this year I'm touring with them, a few smaller runs with them, and then December is with Ben Foltz, who was I've got to work with a lot over the years, recent years, and he was one of my favorite guys. When I first was getting into pop rock singer songwriter, it was like I found Ben Foltz and Elliott Smith, and those were two guys that were roughly the same era that I was just knocked out. So with him, I've got to make a couple records, and again, I met Ben the same way I met the Hot Tuna guys, which was I just somehow got a call to work on a record they were working on, and then we hit it off. And Ben is awesome. When he first called me, he really liked bass harp. Wow. And I ended up touring as his bass player primarily. There would be some solos on other harmonicas and eventually a little bit of second keyboards to him, and even some piano somehow. He's a phenomenal piano player. I somehow played a little bit of piano recently with him as well. And that was awesome because I somehow had to get together some bass harmonica skills. Like I somehow got the gig before I could play the bass. I did record it for him, but I had never really played gigs on it, as a
That's a pretty unusual request. Was there a record he heard of somebody else that he was like, I love this sound or something? Or do you know what?
When I first met him, he was working on a project he was producing for Kesha, the singer, and they, I think, had Pet Sounds as a point of reference, so it made sense to get it on the menu, and I guess we hit it off. And I don't actually know, because on Pet Sounds, I don't think the bass harmonica is the bass player on the band. It's like a part of an orchestra,
right?
Like a Wrecking Crew style ensemble to which there is a bass player.
Interesting.
So I actually am not totally clear on at what point in time he was like, we can just have that Sanford and Son stuff as our bass. I do know that part of it is that he's such a phenomenal piano player, and he was really used to playing solo. That his left hand, he felt left hand and kick drum, that's a lot of low frequency information. And he's such a strong solo performer that I think he perhaps, my suspicion is, was attracted to a bass instrument that would be a little off, off the beaten path, but also wouldn't necessarily command too much more space than when there were these other instruments. That's part of it.
Yeah.
A little background. The Sanford and Son TV series, the theme song starts off do 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 do. That's the bass harmonica. Just so you know,
It's one of the hits, the bass harmonica hits. There's not a lot of them. That's one of them.
It's cool though. It's a unique sound. That's
It is.
sure.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. So that's the main touring things I've been doing, and in terms of other collaborations and playing, I've kind of lucked out that my neighbor is a wonderful blues guitar player named Nathan James, who, like I said, my favorite players were always the great blues players, but I didn't ever really get a lot of chance to play blues with real studied blues musicians who had dedicated their lives to it and stuff. So he has been super cool, just letting me play with him, and we've had a lot of fun. That's been a real great education. He knew all kinds of harmonica stuff I knew nothing about, and so I learned a lot from him, and that's been a lot of fun. And other than that, I do have a duo that we make our own, sometimes harmonica oriented music, but mostly it's a studio project called the Magnetic Vines. And we it's one of my best friends, Eric Myron. We used to play together I used to play with him all the time, but during COVID he moved to Montana, which is where he's from. He moved back there, and we just kind of stayed connected and started recording, and it just kind of turned into something we both really liked. And it's a pretty expansive, weird project that is very eclectic.
Yeah. So when you do a project like that, I mean, you play all these different types of harmonicas and different instruments as well. And I mean, some things I've heard you do even with the harmonica, like if you played it for me, I might not even know it's harmonica. It's just cool and musical, but it's got this interesting, some interesting textures to it and stuff. But how do you decide, like, if you're doing a thing with like the project you were just talking about, what are you going to, if you're going to play harmonica or if you're going to play piano, or like what instrument you're going to use or type of instrument?
I think a good portion of it's probably purely intuitive. And then I also think a lot of it's just like what you're sitting in front of. Because I've always thought, like, I just had a lot of experiences where somebody pulls up a sound on their instrument or whatever it is, and it's perfect, and then they pull up a sound that's not perfect, and then you fiddle with a couple other things, and it's like my EQ, this effect, and it's like, it sounds awesome now, and so I guess for me, I have a feeling that for the most part, unless there's a narrative reason or like an album-wide theme, or there's some reason why some instruments should be on the menu or shouldn't be on the menu, my feeling is probably most things can work in most ways, especially if you're not committed to doing it in a particular way. I think if you have to do something in a traditional way, you gotta probably follow those conventions.
Yeah.
But if you're not specifically tied to that, it seems to me whatever instruments are closest to the computer are definitely the ones that are going to be on the recording, And this happens to me a lot. I think whenever I can't do a recording gig, like somebody's like, "Hey, we want harp. Can you do this now?" I'm like, no, I wish, but like they're like, "Okay, cool. Can you do it tomorrow?" I was like, "All right, yeah." A lot of the times it's like, we figured something else out, and it wasn't harmonica that they got. It's like whatever that vision was, it was like there was a need for a musical role to happen in a part of a piece, and then they just start monkeying with things around and they find something great, even if it wasn't what they had initially envisioned. I feel like that happens a lot, and so that's
so kind of the creative process. You're just trying stuff out to see if it works, and if it does, then
if you're talking about the Magnetic Vines, a lot of times we put it in a box before the album. Like, here's a solo piano album, piano plus effects. Here's a guitar album. Here's an ensemble. So sometimes we set the boundaries ahead of time. This is going to be free improvised. We're going to do it all live in front of an audience, and then we're going to see what we got and maybe do whatever occurs to us later in post-production with it. So I think a lot of times the box can be established ahead of time, or that can be helpful for us because the palette is pretty wide, and you could start pulling up a lot of software or then try these,
Right. Cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good answer, but
yeah, no, I think that's a pretty good answer. It's just interesting how I just find that interesting, different instruments and how do you find that, like, say, do you get ideas on the harmonica from your knowledge of the piano, or do you find that your musical ideas transfer between instruments or inspire different ways of thinking of an instrument because maybe you
I feel like if I was better, that might happen more. And I am constantly amazed at how I'll do something on certain instruments. And I'm like, oh, that was awesome, Ross. You really did great. And then I'll do a different thing on another instrument. Like, oh, that was awesome, Ross. And I try to do the other instrument that I thought I did a really nice. And I try to put it in this other context. Like, man, you suck at this. And like, why can't you play this? Like, you sound good on this instrument here, and then this one there, and then you can't sound good on them reversed. So I think there is a part of it, but I do find, like, for example, just talking about like diatonic and chromatic harmonica, I may really enjoy both of those instruments, but I don't necessarily find them interchangeable, or like piano, for example. There are certain things that I guess due to my physicality I feel pretty good doing. Mm-hmm. But if I were to try to do maybe something I would be really at home on harmonica trying to do, even if it was just the genre of music, not like taking a harmonica idea and translating it to piano, but actually like the whole musical genre, it may just feel like really foreign to me, and I'm just like, man, I cannot. So I'm not really sure, and I will say with harmonica, you were talking about different sounds and things. I think just again coming up with a lot of the guys that I did come up with and friends and people I saw, I think with different sounds I didn't think that much about it. I'd go see or listen to Bill Frisell records or guitar players. It's so not uncommon for them to hit a couple pedals on their stereo rig, and all of a sudden you have this amazing sound that does not sound like somebody playing an acoustic guitar. And we just have heard it enough that we accept that as on the palette of guitar. That I don't remember thinking like, oh, I need the harmonica to not sound like a harmonica. It was just like put it through reverb. It was like, oh, it sounds sweet, and then that was that kind of thing. As far as that,
cool.
Yeah.
Hey, so if anyone out there is interested in working with you, studying with you, learning from you, of course, they can come to the Spa Harmonica Festival, of which you've been at here for the last 2 years, and I fully intend to do whatever I can to, like, twist your arm into coming again, because it's such a cool thing. Also, they could catch you at the Harmonica Northwest event that has been happening in the month of October at Manuka. Do you make yourself available to work with anybody else in any other context, or
for like studying
lessons?
I'm not opposed to it, but it hasn't gone very well for me in the past. I've found that I do have a student at the moment, and his interests align well with my interests, and he is flexible and appreciates that what I am teaching him are things that he's interested in that he might have trouble finding elsewhere. But I found, for the most part, my schedule has been so variable that it's been pretty frustrating for me. Like, I would like to be able to teach because it's really fun for me. And I learn a lot from it, and I enjoy just helping people and connecting with them. But I have found people who are looking for a regular regimented lesson,
Right.
that it is difficult for me, and I just, unfortunately, a lot of my work ends up being very last minute, and it's I can't say no to a lot of it, so it's been trickier. I would like to. So case by case, I can be talked into it.
I can see that too, because you're doing some touring. Then that interrupts stuff too. You can't. It's tricky to. Teaching.
I would enjoy, like, it would be cool if I could say this day I'm gonna teach, but it just really hasn't worked out for me to be able to do that.
Understandable.
They have to show up at Harmonica Northwest. I guess that's right. That's it.
I can be talked into it, but most people talk themselves out of it eventually.
And regarding your recorded music, certainly you can all go to the movies and hear Ross up on the big screen. But do you have any other collections or anything that you direct people to if they want to get to know you, the musician, better and get you in their playlist?
I appreciate you asking. If this I don't know if this is a podcast or I guess it's not. It's video. The video series is focused for harmonica players. So I'd say a lot of the music that I have done for my own pleasure and recorded for just because I wanted to, it's pretty eclectic, and not all of it is harmonica oriented. But one project I released recently that the theme was harmonica on every track. I don't know if that was the theme, but that was the jumping off point. Is a Magnetic Vines album called Of Wind and Reeds and Very Old Trees. So I would recommend checking that out. Probably most of my other music you might find under my name will not be what you're looking for if you're interested in harmonica stuff. But Of Wind and Reeds and Very Old Trees would be the one.
That's a good title. I like just the title sounds appealing.
It wasn't mine. The idea was my partner Eric.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thanks so much for stopping by, spending some time with us, and sharing this cool information. We really do appreciate it.
Hey, thank you guys for asking me.
Oh, man.